Greetings, fellow songwriters and seekers, and welcome back to Muse and Measure. If you haven't done so yet, please take a moment, hit the subscribe button down below. So I've been doing a series on inevitable melodies, and we've talked a lot about music theory and certain chord progressions that will make a melody feel inevitable, certain notes that you end a phrase on which help it feel inevitable. Today I want to talk about the emotion and letting emotion lead the drive and take you where it wants to go. Now, what this means depends on whether you are starting with just a melody and no lyrics, or you're dealing with a set of lyrics that you are also writing with the music, or maybe you have a set of lyrics already written that you want to set to music. Well, they should work in tandem with each other to create an emotional state, because that's really what a music is about, is communicating emotion. And so if you have a set of lyrics, you want the music to directly reflect what's going on emotionally in those lyrics, and to help with delivering the message and the imagery and just the overall feeling and mood of the lyrics with the music. Obviously, you don't want a really happy, upbeat song when your lyrics are all about being depressed, unless that's the intention that you have. Maybe that would be a wonderful thing and actually enjoyable and kind of hilarious to listen to, but it will have a comical effect, and you've got to, that's got to be what you're aiming for. So you should always be thinking about how the music and the lyrics are working together to create this emotionality. Now, when you're starting with music and you're setting lyrics to your melody that you've already written, obviously you're going to be asking yourself, well, what does this sound like with this melody? What's going on there? There's a descent, a falling down. So the lyrics should have something to do with that, or at least the emotion of the lyrics shouldn't be about like, oh, today was such a wonderful day. Today was such a glorious day. It just doesn't fit, does it? Because the music and the lyrics are speaking and saying two different things, and you don't want them to be in opposition with each other. You want them to be working together. Today was such a glorious day. All right, that works, right? So doing kind of things like that helps a lot. And today I want to talk a little bit about some extremes of this. Now, there's some cliches in music and just kind of go-tos when it comes to setting certain emotions to certain, especially chords. So kind of the standard thinking is like major is happy, minor is sad, dominant 7 makes this sense of longing. I don't know. Let's try them out and see, because really you could rely on music theory for this stuff, and you can and you should, but don't take it, as the holy gospel. Actually explore them and explore the feelings that these chords evoke, especially in your state of mind and with the lyrics that you're working with or the concept that you're working with. Because, this is C major. Sure, it can be happy, but I hear it can also be solemn and sad. Or minor. It can be dark and brooding, not brooding, but it can also be, especially if it's got some kind of rhythm to it. It can also be something that is not sad, but is maybe joyful and energetic. Same thing with adding a 7th. So now, in traditional music theory, that adding 7th is adding some kind of sense of longing, or making it unstable, so that it all of a sudden, something that was totally stable and happy to be where it was, by adding that 7th to it, makes you want to go someplace else. And most likely you want to go to the 4 at that time, the F chord. But if you're playing something in the blues idiom, or even a line that is related to the blues, they just hang out on the 7th. seventh chords. And when you're in the blues idiom, that it doesn't have this sense of longing where it needs to go to some other chord. There's plenty of blues songs. We listen to John Lee Hooker, and he'll just hang out on one chord for the whole song, and it's a seventh chord and never goes anywhere. Maybe that's relating to the experience that they are describing. Their hardships, how difficult life is, maybe some frustration in a relationship, that maybe there is some longing there, but it's unfulfilled longing. I can't be satisfied. A great song by Muddy Waters, which the Rolling Stones then used for their version. So I suggest, when we talk about emotional inevitability, don't just take, what's written, what's gone before as the gospel, that you have to adhere to it. It's there to guide you. So maybe if you want to write a happy song, then you want to stick to a major key and try it out. And if it works, great. But if you're not quite satisfied with it, try some other stuff. There's other types of chords too, like major seventh. Well, what emotion does that reveal? Or sharp 11. Adding like a ninth to a chord, add some sweetness to it, or even a 13th. So what does that do for it? Or sharp 9. Now, so it's worth investigating these things, and you don't just need to take them for granted. But one technique that I want to share with you comes from the late Renaissance, early Baroque era, and they're called madrigalisms. And madrigalisms are where you are looking at the text, and whatever happens with the words of the text, you're trying to have that happen in the music itself. You're reflecting exactly what the words are saying. For example, if you have words like rise, heaven, fly, or climb, then your melody is going to keep going up, keep going up, keep going up, so it's reflecting what the words are saying. An example that I can think of, that you might know, is Climb Every Mountain from The Sound of Music, where this nun is trying to encourage Julie Andrews to go out and find her dream and, move higher and higher and higher. Let's take a listen to it for a second.
Climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find your dream.
You can definitely hear in the chords there how you hit this rising action, and that's directly related to the lyrics. Now, the opposite is true when you have, words like fall, descend, or low. Then the music can do the opposite. It can fall, and you can either do this gradually or it can be a surprise. And one of my favorite examples of this is He'll Have to Go. I'll tell the man to turn the jukebox way down low. So that's a great little jump, and it directly relates to what the text is saying, going down low. Bach did this in the Durch Adams Fall ist ganz verdelgt. Sorry for my bad German. Where he related the fall of Adam to this descending chromatic line. I think in his left hand, but of course this is an organ piece, so there's two hands and 2 feet going on at the same time. You can use harsh dissonance whenever something rough happens, like pain, death, sorrow. And what I mean by dissonance is, like this, maybe not that extreme. Another example from classical music is Schubert's Gretchen am Spinnrad, where all of a sudden when she says his kiss, sein Kuss, there's a pierce of dissonance in an otherwise beautifully consonant, nice lulling melody. Let's take a listen.
Edle Gestalt seines Mundes Lächeln, seine Augen Gewalt und seine Rede Zauberfluss, seine Hände Druck und
here all of a sudden that beautiful consonance is just ripped through with this moment of kind of dissonant harmony, which is very dramatic as a piece of madrigalisms. Some other examples, you can have quick rhythms like a fast-moving pace whenever you're describing, running or fleeing. Another great example from Schubert from his Erlkönig. Let's listen to a section. That rolling feeling that you have there. And my German-speaking friends are going to kill me for all my terrible German pronunciation, so I apologize for that. You can use long sustained notes for words like forever or eternal. Sudden silences for things like stop or die. And just kind of curious of our highbrow Schubert and Bach, let's hear some Elvis.
You gotta stop, you're wrong again. Stop that song again.
You gotta stop, and you cut it off, right? So these are all great examples of madrigalisms. Now, the true master of madrigalisms to study and listen to, if you really want to get a deep sense of how music can paint along with the words and really reflect what's going on in the text, is a composer by the name of Gesualdo. 16th century, he was a prince and, should have led a charmed life. But unfortunately, he caught his wife in bed with a duke, and he murdered them. Now, obviously, because he had the privilege of being royalty, he did not serve any time or get executed, but he did have to retreat to his family estates. And we might say, oh, poor Gesualdo, yes, this poor little rich boy. But he was also an incredible musical genius. And unfortunately, it seems to be true, and I'm not prescribing this to anybody, and I hope it doesn't happen to you, but oftentimes the harder someone's life is, the more difficulties they have to go through, the more emotionally tormented they are, the better their music is, or the more we can feel from it, or maybe they're more in touch with it. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to go through all that. And I'm sure there's plenty of examples of people who lived pretty nice, charmed lives and were born with a silver spoon in their mouth and never heard a discouraging word in their life, who made great music too that is just as emotionally wrought. But I don't know, maybe you can put those in the comments because none are coming to mind at the moment. So Gesualdo, after he murdered his wife and the Duke, ran off and lived in his family estates. He was so riddled by what he had done. I'm speculating, of course, now because he never writes about this, but scholars really think that you can hear all this anguish in his music. And he so masterfully takes texts and perfectly assigns musical lines to them which directly reflect what's going on in the text. And so when you listen to his music, it's just like it's like reading a story, but having this whole other guide to help you feel the emotion. Whereas before, maybe the text would just be like, oh, just little concepts, little imageries that pop in your head. Maybe a line would go by you don't quite understand. Well, with Gesualdo, having this emotional soundtrack to the lyrics really guides it, and he is so masterful at it. One example is Amoro lasso al mio duolo. So I butchered German, now I'll butcher some Italian for you. I die, alas, in my sorrow. And when he sets the word moro, he does it with this really crazy kind of disturbing dissonance. Let's take a listen to it for a second. So in these passages, every word is charged with this emotional or erotic tension. And it just feels like the music is suffering right along with the words. And that's just incredible. That shows you the true power of poetry and music put together. that they can bring about these states. And I can't think of any contemporary that's done it like this. Now, obviously, to take it back to the practical here, you don't necessarily want to be a madrigalist. I mean, that era has passed. And it can just get a little silly at times if every single word and chord is directly, related to the concept that you're trying to do in your music. I remember once giving my brother a piece to write, based on some lyrics, just a background, a recorder part, and when there was a sailor mentioned, he played diddly-dee-diddly-dee-dee. So that's my example of just kind of a hilarious but ridiculous madrigalism, where it just becomes, just absurd. So you don't want to do that in music necessarily, where every single line your music is changing and shifting so much because you're trying so hard to relate it to the words. But you should always be thinking about how the music is serving the lyrics, or if you already have your music and you already have your lyrics, or you're writing your lyrics to your melody, you can write your words according to the emotionality of the music, which is something that isn't done that often. I don't know that many songwriters who do that, where they actually listening to the music and go, okay, well, what emotion is being expressed here in the music that I can put into words? And maybe that's because music is so kind of sublime and beyond conception and ineffable and hard to grasp as far as putting into words, that we struggle with that. But it's definitely something very useful to try to do. And as an exercise, you might want to take a piece of music that is already written and try to write some lyrics to it that match the emotion. That would be a great exercise to try out. And maybe if you do something that's in the public domain, you'll get something that's absolutely incredible, like Aura Lee. Do 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 became Love Me Tender. So maybe you can do something great like that. And then the only last point is, like, sometimes you want it to be kind of deadpan and to have the emotion be subdued. So madrigalisms is just over the top emotion where, it's being very, very explicit about the emotion that is being expressed. But sometimes you want to just be kind of like, oh, well, I'm sort of feeling this emotion, but I'm feeling kind of dead and numb too. So then at that point, if that's your intent there, then you don't want the music to follow the lyrics. Maybe you want it to do the opposite. Maybe have a happy little music thing while you're having a melancholy or sad lyric, or just something that doesn't change at all, that doesn't respond. So it's like the music is the world, not giving a damn about the way you're feeling. And that's just kind of the context and the feeling of what you're experiencing of that emotion in the world. That, I'm just so distraught and depressed, but nobody cares. So at that point, you want to do a reverse madrigalism where you don't want to express that. So anyways, this is all just food for thought. I hope you find this interesting and this technique useful. But yeah, so as you're writing your music and you're adapting the lyrics to it, or you have a set of lyrics you're doing music to, keep these madrigalisms in mind, this word painting in mind, and see if you can do a little bit of it to greater affect your listener and to communicate better as a communicator of emotions. Well, best of luck with your communicating of emotions, your songwriting, your spiritual practice, and all else that you are taking on to endeavor in this week. I'll see you next time on Muse and Measure.